Well, that was all painful. If you're just joining, I tried to do this video several minutes ago, and then the whole thing just completely went to shit because of my computer. And I am going to talk about my computer in a moment. What I will ask, because I have just rolled over to another computer, is that if you're watching this, just leave a comment and let me know. G'day, Burton. You can leave a comment that the video looks okay and the audio sounds okay, particularly because I got the new microphone, which I'm going to talk about very, very soon. A lot better now. Thanks, Logan. Holy shit. So I'm in this phase where everything around me is breaking, like no matter what it is. So just off the top of my head, this last week, microphone's breaking. I'll talk about the new microphone in a moment. The PC is broken. We'll talk about that. This morning, I went into my boat shed to get my wakeboard, and the handle broke. And I know that sounds like a very, very first world problem, but that was on the top of the fireplace inside breaking, which also sounds kind of first world problem, and the roof leaking. And every single little thing that could break lately just feels like it's breaking. Anyway, I'll talk about the computer and why I'm so upset about that. In good news, I got beer, so that's something, right? Now, what this means is that I'm looking at my laptop down here, which has just suddenly been wired into everything. Oh, shit, my PC just died. I didn't die, I just went to sleep. And then I got all my normal screens and things around here, all of which are about to be replaced, and I'll get into that in a moment. And yes, beer does fix everything, so thank you for that, Burden. In rough order of things that was on my list until the fridge breaks. The fridge is broken. Seriously, I've got to replace. I've got to replace two fridges because they're like built into the cupboards, and one of them, the ice maker's broken in, like the freezer part of it, and then the other one keeps leaking water all over the place. And the guys came out and looked at it a couple of weeks ago, a couple of months ago. I don't know when. I lose track of what's broken when. And they said, it's about 10 years old. Like the next time this thing breaks, you have to replace it because basically that's how long a fridge lasts for. Yeah, it's good beer too. So this is Bent Spoke. So this is a beer from Canberra. Something good has come out of Canberra. For those of you not from Australia, Canberra's where all the politicians are. And this one is exceptionally good. So, it could be worse. And I have a whole fridge full of it. As far as I know, the fridge is still working too. That's the beer fridge. That one's okay. So, I did actually get out wakeboarding today, which is cool. The first time I've been to the wake park since COVID-19. So another little bit of normality returning. So I went out. It was an absolute rotten weather day, but I got to go out and go wakeboarding, which was quite nice. It was a nice change. So we're sort of returning a little bit to normal there. I haven't even checked our scores actually today as to how we're going with the whole COVID thing. We've been doing really well in this state, but our southern states, Victoria in particular, has just had loads of cases recently. Fortunately, very few community transmissions, but a lot of people returning from overseas. And sometimes people get a bit uppity about this. It's like, why are we letting people in from overseas, bringing the disease into the country? It's like, well, if you're an Australian citizen or resident or PR or whatever, you have a right to be here. You can actually return, and then you go into isolation. And these cases are being identified in isolation. And there's only a very, very small number of community transmissions. Which is good, but unfortunately it has popped our total active number in Australia up to 180. But I think in our fine state here, yes, we are down to 4 now. It's 4 people out of 5.1 million in this state that have COVID-19. So that's good news. Only 1 person in hospital, not in ICU, and still only a total of 6 deaths. Tragic all the same, but 6 out of 5.1 million people is pretty freaking amazing. So we're doing pretty well on that front. Now, a couple of other things first. I have to see how this works because I've literally got 2 mice on my mouse pad here trying to make all the things work. And I had to put my keyboard over there because I accidentally kept typing on this keyboard, which was connected to the other computer, instead of to the one that's on my laptop, just here, just to make life even more confusing. Sponsors. I want to talk about a sponsor, and it relates really well to this week's blog post, which just went live. So sponsor this week is safepass.me. Now, I've known the folks at SafePass for quite some years, actually. In fact, when I used to travel, I got to spend some time with SafePass. And SafePass actually uses pwned passwords. And I'm going to talk more about pwned passwords later on, but they do things like Active Directory integrations using the NTLM hashes from pwned passwords so that you can integrate it into your own environment and see if other people are using passwords which have previously been pwned. So they're talking about credential stuffing, currently the biggest threat to organizations, which I kind of agree with in terms of, at least in terms of volume of attack, because we're seeing this all the time. Find out how you can protect your network now with safepass.me. So good on those guys for being this week's blog sponsor. You'll see a bit more of them. First time to have them on the blog, and a better fit for what I do I cannot think of, which is really nice. So I'll come back and I'll talk more about pwned passwords a little bit later on, because it is sort of the feature blog post at the moment. Just having a look at the comments, and of course I'm looking away from the camera now because it's literally, I'm just scared of touching anything now in case it breaks. Literally, like, laptop is down here and camera's up there where it normally be on the monitors. So yeah, the 4 out of 1.5 million is incredible, and we're very, very conscious that it is incredible. And honestly, like, I think everyone here feels exceptionally grateful. It's kind of interesting, actually. Like, all of us are online, and for all intents and purposes, I could be anywhere in the world doing this. So the interactions you have with people feel much more like, that there are no borders. But of course, our world here is very, very different to other parts of the world. And often I'll see messaging around things like, make sure you always wear a face mask. So irresponsible to wear, not to wear a face mask. And because we had such a low rate of COVID all the way through, I only ever wore a face mask once, and it was to get into the Apple store. There was all these people walking around the store, basically just about nobody with a face mask. You see, I'd say single-digit percentage of people. Very often high-risk demographics, or people from places like China, which have a more social acceptance around you wearing face masks, even at the best of times. And they went, to get in here, you got to do a queue. They laser your head, make sure that you're not sick, and then they let you in with the face mask. So yeah, that is the one time I've had to wear one during the whole pandemic. And I know there's probably people feeling very envious about that, but that's the fortune that we have had in this part of the world. Other things this week that have been very important. I got the Lego Lamborghini. So I'm starting a tweet thread on this. The Chiron, Bugatti Chiron, which is just there behind me. I had a massive tweet thread going a couple of years ago during the whole build, and people seem to love it because, let's face it, we just never grow out of Lego. So I'm going to do the same thing with the Lambo. It's all there on the kitchen table, and it's basically my escape from being here doing computer things or fixing shit that's been broken around the house. So that's what I've been doing with the Lego. And speaking of shit that's been broken around the house, I have been throwing myself into the IoT stuff lately as well. And oh my God, this is the deepest rabbit hole I think I have gone down in terms of tech things. It all started out wanting to automate my garage doors. And I'm actually going to have 2 blog posts out of this. I'm going to have one, which is like the fundamentals of an IoT environment these days. And then another, which is going to be about how to actually open your bloody garage doors, which is what I wanted to do in the first place. Now, what this has all led to is I had to go and end up with Home Assistant, which is enormously powerful. It's a home automation service, open source, very, very active, freely available. You usually run it on a Raspberry Pi. So I've got a Raspberry Pi down there in the server room that runs that. That's actually going really well. But all the other integrations of things, like I've got Xiaomi sensors and things, which are like thermometers and things, which are great, but then they need a Zigbee sniffer. So I've ended up with like a Conbee, which talks over the IETF 802.11 something.4. I can't remember. It's all in the blog post. But I've just gone down this massive rabbit hole, and 2 months later, I still can't open the garage door, but the little PCBs, which are going to allow me to do it, have arrived. So somehow I'm going to solder this into the garage, into the motors that open the garage door, Wi-Fi it into the Home Assistant and everything else, and then use like Home Bridge to talk to HomeKit. So eventually I can pick up my watch and talk to Siri and open the garage door like I wanted to. So Walshy, that's the update on the garage doors. But it has been a fascinating experience. Let's just put it that way. What I will say is it is an absolute freaking mess, the whole IoT space, and there are some really, really valiant efforts to tie it together. But it is a maker's world. Like if my mum and dad ever wanted to do this, it just it would just never happen. Anyway, I will come back and talk about that in more detail at another time because I've got a lot of other stuff to go through first, such as seeing the bottom of this beer, which I desperately need at the moment. Now, speaking of broken things, one of the things that broke, and I don't know if I think it was still working last week, and then it broke on the weekend, was, you know what? It's in the rubbish bin. There you go. My old Electro Voice RE320. Now, I would have recorded thousands of hours of content on this. I did most of my Pluralsight courses on this. I would argue that a significant portion of my income has come from actually talking into this. And it was great and it was really reliable until it just stopped working altogether, just straight out of the blue. It wasn't even like it degraded or anything. One day it was just like, nah, I'm over this. And it just did not work at all. So I made the mistake of asking for suggestions on the internet. And yeah, I probably should recycle that. Do you want it? or I'll chuck it in the e-waste. So we do have dedicated e-waste areas in our rubbish dumps here. The frustrating thing about it is that in order for me to do the right thing with that old microphone, I have to probably spend about 45 minutes in the car driving to a location, dropping it off. But I do have other crap to get rid of, so maybe we'll do that together. So yeah, thank you for the comment there. And I'm going to move this up a little bit too. We'll move that camera down a little bit. Everything's out of order now that I've changed screens. Maybe just sit straighter. So anyway, I asked on the internet which microphone I should get, and of course there's a gazillion different responses. And should it be a dynamic microphone or not, or should it be a? Geez, I forgot what I got in the end. Which one should it be? Brand, costs, all that sort of thing. I ended up. I was going to go and buy a new Electro Voice, probably the highest spec model, because that one's made me enough money to get a nicer one now. But I ended up deciding to get a Rode, in part because I just had heaps of people say, look, Rode is a really great brand, and also in part because it is an Australian-made microphone. Now, part of that is me wanting to support Australia, particularly at the moment. I think everyone's trying to help their own economies get back up and running. And partly also because I knew I could get one delivered really quickly. But it's not that simple. It's like, okay, get a Rode. All right, now there's all these different models of Rode, and people are going, go and get like the Procaster. And other people are going, no, get the Podcaster. And then some people are going, get the Broadcaster. So I had a chat with someone at Rode, and I ended up with the latter one, which is the Broadcaster, which is, if we go up there and have a look, it looks like that. Now, this particular one at the moment is just mounted directly onto my extendable arm here, which coincidentally is a Rode extendable arm. I am still awaiting the shock mount and the little pop filter, which will go on top of it. So there'll be a kind of fluffy, not a fluffy thing, but a foamy thing on top of this. I'll normally put that just below the picture like that. So far, I'm super happy with this. It's probably not going to sound great being compressed on YouTube and going out over there, but the local copies I did on it, the local demos I did on it, sounded really good. This is a condenser microphone as opposed to dynamic microphone. That was the word I was looking for, which apparently gets more richness out of your voice, but might also be more likely to pick up other things from the background. Now, fortunately, the acoustics in this room are pretty good. There's carpeted floors. I put the blind down, so that's a soft surface. There's a bit of hard surface behind me, and of course there's screens in front of me. But for the most part, it actually works pretty well. So far, the tests I've done are really good. Now, here's where it all started to go downhill. And I realized none of this has had anything to do with InfoSec so far, other than the sponsor. Right at the same time, the microphone died. I'm hearing what sounds like a fan on my PC going. Now, when I set this PC up about 6 years ago, I got super quiet fans, and I built it all up together with a mate of mine who understands more about building PCs than what I did. And it's worked really well. And it has seen me through many Pluralsight courses and presentation creations and everything else. And I'm hearing this noise that sounds like a fan. And it's like, no worries, a bit of percussion fix it will do. So percussion fixing it is when you just hit it and it stops. Or if I need to, I'll just take the fan off and I'll put another one in. Couldn't figure out what fan it is. And I'm sort of unplugging jumpers off the main board, letting the fan stop for a moment. No, noise is still there. And eventually I've worked out that it's got like a closed loop water cooling system. So this is on both the CPU and the GPU, two separate ones. Inevitably, one of the pumps in the closed loop water cooling system has gone. And I realized this because when I look at the temperature now on SpeedFan, it's running at 89 degrees Celsius at the moment, which is a lot of degrees more than what it really should be. That's why there's a little flame sign next to it. And that wasn't real good. So then I realized that the whole machine started absolutely running like a dog. And it's like, well, what do? Do I go down the rabbit hole again of like trying to replace the water cooling elements? But then it's a 6-year-old machine already. It's only got 24 gig of RAM, which I keep maxing out anytime I do any work directly on SQL Server queries here. So I do a lot of data processing on here. There's another story altogether as to why I'm not doing that stuff on the cloud. And at the end of the day, it's 6 years old already, and I literally leave this running 24/7 because often it's doing processing overnight. I come in the morning, I jump straight into it. Yes, I could put it to sleep, but then that would kill some of the processing stuff, so on and so forth. So it has had a good run. So eventually I was like, all right, I got to replace that. And just by pure coincidence, I asked only a few days ago, I said, hey, it's almost the end of the financial year here in Australia. And people tend to do a little bit more spending towards the end of the financial year because they can realize the tax advantages of that spending, 12 months earlier than if they wait till the 1st of July as opposed to doing it on the 30th of June. And a bunch of people were like, get a new PC. And like, mine's fine. Was at the time. Anyway, so I'm doing a new PC. Now I'm going to tell you what I'm getting. I haven't told anyone what I'm getting yet, simply because Twitter goes absolutely nuts when you do this. And people would say, I'm getting the wrong thing. I should get something else, which is probably what you're going to do now. Regardless, I'll tell you what I'm getting. I'm going to get PC. I'm going to do monitors too, and I'll explain the monitors in a moment. But everything's open here on the page. So I decided to go and get Lenovo simply because, number one, I got a relationship with Lenovo, and they already give me a bunch of other machines. Number two, the reason I got the relationship is because I spent a lot of money with Lenovo in the past, and I've been really happy with the build quality of them. They just seem to be super, super machines, very, very stable. Things like the laptop I just showed, and the other one, which is still sitting here, which was my primary machine for many, 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 many years. So this is a P50 just here. Xeon processor in this, 64 gigabytes of RAM, same as that one. They have been awesome machines, and I've loved them. So I was happy to go Lenovo again on the build quality side. Being part of the program, I do get some savings as well. I'm probably not meant to say how much, but enough to justify buying Lenovo purely on a cost basis, let alone the reputation. So that's the path I'm going to go down. So don't go and tell me go and get this Dell thing or build your own or something like that. Question then is, what do I get? Now, at the moment, it's a little bit hard to show you, but there's a big tower down there. It's a bit noisy at the moment because one of the pumps is gone. But I've got a lot of internal drives in there. So because of the nature of what I do, I end up trying to sort of spread workload across drives, and then I run out of room, and then I just chuck another drive in. I like having a bunch of drives. So the tower fit out is good. I have Xeon processors, as I mentioned, in both these laptops. Xeon processors are super resilient, tend to have a slightly lower clock speed than if I went to an i9 or something like that, but they're great for sort of really resilient workloads. And then, of course, loads of RAM and things like this. So what I'm looking at here is a ThinkStation P720, which is not the biggest tower. You can go bigger, but it's big enough. And at the moment, it looks like I'm speccing it with two Intel Xeon Silver 4210s. So two processors there. And what else is significant here? So memory, it's actually got 12 slots for memory, and you can put 64 gigabyte RDIMMs in it with DDR4. I think 12 of those might be a bit overkill, but I think I'm going to put 2 in. So 128 gigabytes worth of RAM in the thing. And I do regularly max out my RAM when I'm doing data processing, particularly running like really, really large SQL Server queries. Video-wise, I'm going to go with an NVIDIA Quadro RTX 4000, 8 gigabyte. And that has 3 DisplayPort slots in it as well. So I'll be able to run 3 screens off that. I'm going to talk about the screens in a moment. And incidentally, as I'm saying, if you have any constructive feedback on any of these things, please drop it into the comments. I'm going to come back and look at them in a moment. So that's video. What else have we got in here of significance that I have spec'd? It does have an onboard M2 NVMe. They are super, super fast drives. Both of my laptops run those. I'll spec that with a 1 terabyte version of those. So that'll run the host OS, but all of the voluminous data and things like that ultimately tend to end up putting on spinning Rust drives, or I'll fit what I can. I mean, this is a nice thing about having multiple drives where you can sort of prioritize workload between some drives that are much more expensive per gigabyte, such as the SSDs and the NVMe SSDs. And you can put the stuff that's more just sort of cold storage. So, for example, say a bunch of data breaches on processing that just need to sit there. They can sit on a 7200 RPM drive, which might be a lot larger. So that'll go on there. What else we got in here? And then I haven't spec'd any more discs because I have a lot of discs just here. It's a funny thing. It comes with an optical drive, and I'm like, I wonder if I can delete that because I can't remember the last time I used an optical drive. Nope, can't delete that. So I know how I can delete it once it arrives, but I literally have not used an optical drive, I reckon, for at least 3 years. So I don't need that. Integrated memory card reader, can't really change anything on that. That's fine. I don't care about that. I needed to actually add a Wi-Fi wireless LAN adapter with Bluetooth as well. I thought that was kind of cool. I have not seen a Wi-Fi LAN adapter with Bluetooth too. It might just show how long it's been since I've set up a PC. Free edition. That's okay. I haven't spec'd with Thunderbolt. You can have a Thunderbolt card for a couple of $100 before Lenovo Insider discount. If I should have a Thunderbolt card, let me know. I can't think of a reason why I'd need one now, but while I'm there, tell me if I need Thunderbolt. What else we got? It comes with a power cord. That's good. Spec'd with a 900 watt power supply. It comes with 650. You can spec it with either 650, 900, or 1,000. And I actually had someone on one of the Lenovo forums do the maths, and he's like, yeah, you're basically going to be at like 600. So yeah, maybe 900. So that'll do. And that's about it. So I think I'm going to pull the trigger on that one probably tomorrow morning, because it's just getting too late and I've been drinking beer to go and spend that much money on a laptop without having sort of cohesive thoughts. All right, so I just want to have a look at the comments that have come through, just in case anyone's got anything really useful in here. Darren, condenser microphone, yes it is. Send the old mic to Eve blog, not sure what that is. Corsair pump, you know what, I think it was, you're right, it is a Corsair pump on the old one. So there you go. That's thermal throttle temps. So when it crashed earlier today, I was sitting here having a conversation about how much shit in my life is breaking, and then I kid you not, just as I was having this discussion, the whole thing just shut down, and that felt like a thermal shutdown. It wasn't like a blue screen of death, driver fail or anything like that. It was just like, nope, computer says no. So yeah. Fans are best. Water cooling is very bad at the moment, which is interesting. So that the one of the reasons I went with water cooling 6 years ago, now maybe there's just quieter fans now, was because I really wanted quietness, because this was when I was very involved in Pluralsight courses, and that Electro Voice microphone would pick up if there was noise from fans and things. So I guess I'll see what the ones that it comes with sound like. I think I ended up replacing the ones in the original machine with, what were they, Nocturna or something like that, but like just super quiet fans. So we'll see. Hopefully they'll be okay. Beefy machine, yes, indeed. So I guess that everyone tries to find the sweet spot, right, of what is your tolerance for price, and then what do you get performance-wise. With it, I guess that the joy is, I'm not sure how it is in your various parts of the world, but particularly for me being self-employed, like everything computer-wise is a tax deduction, which means paying for it with pre-tax dollars, which makes it much more effective. And then I do get a lot of life out of it. So these screens, which I'm also going to replace, and I'll tell you about those in a moment, I've had more than 10 years out of these screens, and I bought them off eBay secondhand to begin with. So that's been a pretty good ROI. And the laptop for 6 years, thinking about all the things it's done and what it's allowed me to do in my career, it's like, that is amazing. And I'm sure if I was gave enough thought, I could do the maths on it, but very, 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 very small percentages of productivity increase justify spending a lot more money to get it. And it's just trying to figure out where that sweet spot is now. You need to check the amount of memory channels. 2 sticks of RAM isn't ideal. It's better to fill more slots with low capacity, maybe 432 or 816. So I was actually wondering that. So it's got 4 sets of memory channels. I was looking at a video of the machine earlier on, so they actually show what it looks like in terms of the 2 cores, and then there's 2 memory or 1 memory channel above and 1 memory channel below each one. And I was thinking, would it be more optimal to have 4 32 gig sticks? The only reason and in fact, I might just ask the Lenovo folks on this. The reason I'm hesitating is that it ships by default, I think, with 2 16s. It wasn't like 4 8s. But I will ask. So thank you for that suggestion. It's a good point. Also, consider if you have 2 CPUs, you need to have the same number of DIMMs per CPU. 1 each isn't ideal. So yeah, again, I'll throw that question to Lenovo folks. Confirm 6 memory channels. The higher the number of DIMMs, the better performance you get. Oh, there seems to be a pattern here. For best memory bandwidth performance, Lenovo recommends optimizing the overall memory configuration to use 6 DIMMs per CPU, which would... But see, the problem is then I'd have no expansion left, because with 2 CPUs, you'd end up using 12 DIMMs. And then if I wanted to expand, I'd have to replace one of the ones there. Maybe I should be having like 432s or something like that. I'll check. Mac Pro. What's a Mac? If your old microphone is a condenser mic, it would have broken if you dropped or shocked. No, it wasn't condenser mic. It was a dynamic mic. And no, I didn't drop it or shock it. And one of the reasons is that like this one just here, it literally sits on this arm, so it doesn't drop. It's not like the screw fell loose and it smashed or anything like that. So it's been fine. Read your previous blog post. You said you prefer silent running computers. Is that still relevant? Yeah, that was pretty much what I was just talking about, Burton, in terms of like running it as quiet as possible is really important. Like now I can hear that machine and it bugs me. And some of it does get picked up by mics as well. And the big thing I found in editing courses was the quieter I could make the environment, even things like the chair. So when the chair moves, often it can hit if it's a little bit squeaky, you can hear it. So maybe as it goes back, there's a click halfway through, or my desk. Not sure if you can hear that, but if I wobble the desk, so really that's not ideal. And I'd hear those clicks, and every tiny little click I heard, I'd go back and edit out because I just get inane like that. Anyway, I think memory and dual channel should be perfect. All right, so I will check that, and I'm going to let everyone know maybe in next week's update what I end up doing. So screen-wise, now I actually posted a photo on Twitter earlier on. So if you want to see what it looks like, but I've basically got 4 24-inch Samsung screens, flat panels, typical 16:9 aspect ratios. In fact, there's a little bit more than that because they're 1200 high. They're not 1080 high. So like 1920 by 1200. And look, they've been pretty good. They are very old. So like I said, more than a decade old for the first couple. And then I got another one off eBay a bit later than that. And then another one off eBay a bit later than that. And they've been kind of good. But they are now very old units. They run either VGA or HDMI. No, VGA or DVI. I always get mixed up. DVI, not HDMI. And I've got so many converters and brackets and things to try and make them all work with the graphics card that's in here. It is a little bit painful. So I thought, look, if I'm going through this process, and these are super old monitors anyway, I'll go through and replace those. So I asked on Twitter earlier today, that's when I posted the photos of the other monitors, what do people reckon I should get? And this is so, why can't everyone just agree? But there are all these different suggestions, and they break down to obviously different manufacturers, different models, different themes, curved, not curved, 16:9, ultra wide, high DPI, standard DPI, round. And what I think I've landed on at the moment is, and these are open in yet another tab here, is some more Samsung monitors. And these particular ones are the 49-inch curved Samsung monitor. So 49-inch monitor is basically 2 27-inch monitors side by side like this. And it's just writing down the specs of these. So these are Samsung CRG90s. They're QLED gaming curved dual QHD monitor. So they run a total of 5,120 pixels by 1440 pixels. So they're 1440 high, which will give it a pixel density probably similar to the ones here. So they're not 4K screens or 5K screens. And I'll come back to why in a moment. They, let me see here, what else was relevant here. I'm going to pair them. So what I wanted to do is have like one central big curved screen. So if ever I want to do, like I do end up spending a bunch of time in Adobe Premiere or things like that. If ever I want to have timelines and things, I've got that. And then a pair of also Samsung CJG54 curved screens that are 27-inch. And they're 2560 by 1440 pixels. And they look pretty much identical to the big sucker, except they're like half the width. So I'd end up with like one massive curved screen in the middle and then two half massive curved screens either side, which would be almost the same total width of what I got now. I think it's like 20 centimeters more, and of course more height because they're 27-inch, not 24-inch. So that's the way I'm leaning at the moment. They're not sort of 4K screens, or someone was even suggesting today 5K screens. Those get really, really expensive. And I'm not sure that you can actually get those in like an ultra wide configuration too. So this seems to be the right sweet spot. Unless someone can convince me, and I'm going to go back to the comments now, unless someone can convince me otherwise before I pull the trigger probably tomorrow morning. Now, incidentally, that video card I spoke about in the Lenovo has 3 DisplayPort sockets. So I'm kind of limited to 3 screens unless I get a second video card, or unless I spend a lot more and I get a video card that's got 4 sockets. And one of the things that has always bugged me about having 4 monitors is that if I'm dead center, I'm looking at bezels. So I'm actually looking now, this video camera is on monitor number 2. So it's not quite central. And because it's not quite central, it points off at an angle in the room. So I know they're like little things, but I'd really like to be able to mount it very central. Also, anything that involves loads of research is off at this time. I'm too busy fixing stuff to go and do research. Let me see what else has come through here in the comments. With the NVIDIA card, you can use RTX as well, which I've found to be really good. So they are RTX NVIDIA cards. What is the exact model again? Just for someone who's only just joined in, it was NVIDIA Quadro RTX 4000s. So I was having a good chat to my good mate Scott Helen this morning about these as well, and he was like, just go and get an RTX with like the highest spec you can get. Well, the highest spec you're willing to spend money on, because if I could configure this, man, do you reckon Apple's bad in terms of how far you can turn the dial? I could configure this with 2 NVIDIA Quadro RTX 6000s with 24 gigabytes each, connected via NVLink for an extra $14,000. So no, I won't be doing that. Directional mic won't pick up background noise. Yes, I know. So the this mic is more likely to pick up background noise, the condenser, which is why I'm being extra conscious about background noise. I'll get 2 LG 4K IPS monitors for color accuracy, but again, the problem is you have 2, you got a big bezel down the middle, and I do actually like having at least 3, just in terms of the way I configure my workload. Plus that ultra wide one, you can configure it as 2 separate ones, and I can effectively have 4 screens like I would now, and then there's just no bezel down the middle, which is nice. How much are you looking to spend? Good question. I haven't worked that out yet, and I won't say simply because I don't want to disclose what the discount Lenovo gives me is an amount that I will get a good return on investment in. Let's go with that. You could use RTX Voice to remove background noise. Okay. RTX Voice ruins your audio. All right, that's another rabbit hole. I don't need to go down that rabbit hole now. All right, let me talk about several other things that are more InfoSec related. So Fedora had a data breach. Now, Fedora is a bit of an interesting one. I'm just going to open up the tweet here. So here's a background story with Fedora. So Fedora does food delivery in many parts of the world. In many parts of the world, they no longer do food delivery. They have been acquired by a company called Delivery Hero. And we did obviously have Fedora in Australia because I've got the Fedora Australia data. I've been spending a lot of time in Norway too. Fedora still exists in Norway and is quite, I used to spend a lot of time there. I don't go there anymore. Thank you, COVID. So obviously it's a big food delivery service. Their data had been very extensively circulating probably about 6 weeks ago, I'd say. And what I mean by very extensively is on a very popular hacker forum, available for download, freely accessible on a popular file sharing site, and multiple different people sent me the data. So by any reasonable definition, the Fedora data was all over the place. Now, that doesn't mean I don't do disclosure. So I still want to disclose these things properly. So I've looked at this and gone, all right, where do we even start? Because obviously Fedora is no longer Fedora in a bunch of places. So I had a chat with a journalist mate of mine, a guy named Jeremy Kirk, and I'm mentioning him simply because he's on the public timeline here. And Jeremy tried contacting Delivery Hero, could not get a response. So I did the old, has anyone got a security contact at tweet 1 week ago today. And I actually CC'd the guy who is the CEO of Delivery Hero. Now, later that day, Sigrid got in touch. What does Sigrid do? Sigrid is the director of global corporate comms, Delivery Hero Com. She's also a podcaster, proud mentor, co-founder of Women in Motion EU EX, and then some Twitter handles after that. Anywho, Sigrid reaches out and says, hi, Troy, can you contact press at deliveryhero.com team and we'll get back to you. Jeremy chimes in, hi, Sigrid, I sent 2 messages to that email address and reached out to you via our LinkedIn profile. Can you or someone at Delivery Hero please get in touch? Hi, sorry, not received anything on LinkedIn, but you should have received a reply from our press account now. Have a nice weekend. Thanks, Sigrid. And this is the way it goes. I've written there about this before, about how hard it is to do disclosure properly. So Jeremy is a very, very good journalist. He would have absolutely positively done the right thing in terms of trying to contact Delivery Hero. They ignored him. And then I'm on the internet going, hey, has anyone got a security contact out? And let's face it, everyone knows what that means. So that was a little bit disappointing. Anyway, Delivery Hero is now in Have I Been Pwned? How many pwned accounts did we get to there? I think it was 500,000 something. Sorry, Delivery Hero, Fedora, 582,000. So they're all in there now. They seem to disagree with some of the details. I have an email, something to that effect. So I need to check that and explain to them why they're wrong, because I make sure I'm 100% sure before I put any details on a disclosure like that. And mind you, that wasn't a disclosure because they knew about it already and they did communicate it publicly. Let's call it a breach load. Okay, so that's that. Just looking at some of the comments here. I just saw you have a new pwned password version. Yep. So I'm going to talk about that in a moment. Out of interest for larger companies, do you tell them to download? I'll talk about that. Gravis cards. Yeah, and I could get an NVIDIA RTX with 4 outputs plus, but just to give you an idea, if I wanted to go to the 4 DisplayPort links, that would mean going to an RTX 5000, and that is add $2,000. But mind you, that might just be the difference between how many dollars I'd already added and the 2,000. So I'll check that and see what my tolerance is for future proofing. But I don't think I'm really going to need more than 3 monitors, particularly if I have one of the big curvy suckers. A friend of mine complained Pentest a few years ago, he got spam to an email he had made, especially for Fedora. They never replied to his inquiries. I have a draft blog post about all the reasons people might get an email to an address which they think they've only ever given one company. Now, of course, we know Fedora was actually breached, so maybe that's not relevant here, and that was genuinely because of the breach. But there are a bunch of other reasons as well. All right, next thing. There's some whining going on. Some whining about HTTPS. Some whining from Dave Weiner. Now, I don't want to spend too much time going into the whole background of this because there is quite some background. There's a guy called Dave Weiner who has done some very noteworthy things in the industry over the years. Now, I have to open up his tweet in private mode because otherwise I can't see it. think everyone can figure out why that is. And that then links to a blog post, which is about Google and HTTP. Now, Dave and some others as well seem to be convinced that Google has an evil plan to kill HTTP and make everyone use HTTPS, and that it's all Google's fault. And this, I don't even know where to begin. I'll tell you what, I sent a tweet not long after this, and I found an anti-vaxxer website uses like defaults to HTTPS, and a flat earther website defaults to HTTPS, and a 5G conspiracy theory website defaults to HTTPS. And I sort of said, look, if all of these like completely fly in the face of science websites can use HTTPS, why can't someone who actually knows a thing or two about technology get why it's important? But for the most part, this blog post, and in case anyone wants to go there, it's at this.how/Google and HTTP. Now, this is actually a case-sensitive path. So it's Google and HTTP, camel case. So it's going to be a lowercase g, uppercase A, and an uppercase H. But it's just the weirdest series of arguments, which we've seen many times before. Scott and I have done many cyber broken talks on this, where we basically talk about crazy infosec stuff. And he keeps saying Google's attempting to deprecate HTTP, the protocol of the web, which is not right, because HTTPS implements everything that we know about HTTP, and they're not trying to get rid of the insecure protocol. They're just trying to let people know that they're on the insecure protocol. That's it. And of course, when we talk about Google, we're talking about Chrome and their visual indicators. Okay, I'm just going to find the best bits here. Why this is bad. The web is an open platform, not a corporate platform. Yeah, but Chrome is a Google browser. Like they can do whatever they want with it. It's like Chrome doesn't own the web. Google doesn't own the web. They just build a client that you can use. And if you don't like that, you can use another client. By the way, every other client will also tell you that a non-secure website address is non-secure. Was it bad, practically speaking? Oh, there's some real zingers down here. Google has spent a lot of effort to try and convince you that HTTP is not good. Let me have the floor for a moment. Nope, scroll past that. The web is a social agreement not to break things, because nothing ever breaks on the web, does it? And it's still not breaking. This is what I think Dave just doesn't understand. HTTP is not going away. Like the insecure protocol is not going away. You can still go and load stuff insecurely if you want to. Nothing changes there. They believe they have the power. Google makes a popular browser, the most popular browser, and is a tech industry leader. They believe, encircle the web and at first warn users as they access HTTP content. Yeah, they can actually do that because it's their browser. Very likely they will do more, requiring the user to consent to open a page and then to block the pages outright. So I think what he's saying here is at some point in the future, and we're all speculating here, Google might have a consent screen or a warning screen, just like when Safe Browsing identifies a phishing page, to say you're going somewhere dangerous. Are you sure you want to do that? At some point in time, I reckon that's okay. I don't think that time is now, but at some point in time, when so much of the web is HTTPS and there's these remaining handful of sites, let's say for argument's sake, a single-digit percentage of sites, I reckon that's okay. Then they might block the pages outright. I think you're looking a long way down the road there, Dave, a really long way. It's dishonest. Many of the sites they will label as not secure don't ask the user for any information. But that's kind of a bullshit argument, because the issue is not just the disclosure of private information. The issue is protecting the integrity of the content. So I wrote a blog post called Here's Why a Static Website Needs HTTPS. And I show how much nasty stuff you can put in a website if you can inject into the transport layer, which of course you can if there's no HTTP. Now, moving on, they cite the wrong stats, sleight of hand. It will destroy the web's history. If Google succeeds, it will make a lot of the web's history inaccessible. No, it won't, because you just load it over HTTP and you'll see a warning which says it's HTTP. It's a massive book burning at a much bigger scale than ever done before. See that what happened when I bumped that desk? This was literally one of the things that Scott and I put in one of our Cyber Broken talks, which we used to do and we used to travel. And it just doesn't make any sense. I like this one. The web isn't safe. Finally, what is the value in being safe? Now, here's the good bit. All right. So remember, we're talking about HTTPS protecting the transport layer so that things can't be observed in transit and they also can't be modified in transit. Dave says, lots of things aren't safe. Crossing the street, bike riding in Manhattan. I did that last year. I do agree with Dave. I don't think that was very safe. Falling in love. Fair point. We do them anyway. You can't be safe all the time. Life itself isn't safe. And I actually don't disagree with that, but it also doesn't have anything to do with HTTPS. It's like something bad could happen, but other bad things could happen. You could fall in love riding a bike in Manhattan. I assume that would be like the double whammy of not safe. And then we shouldn't have HTTPS. It's just a really, really weird series of arguments. Update, a threatening email from Google. On June 20, 2018, I got an email from Google as the owner of scripting.com. That's Dave's website. If you go there, it will say not secure. According to the email, I should migrate to HTTPS to avoid triggering the new warning on your site and to help protect users' data. I don't understand how that's threatening. It's like, Dave, you can keep doing whatever you want. Our browser, which we make, and you can choose to use if you like, is going to tell people that your website doesn't have HTTPS if you don't have HTTPS. It's not very threatening. Anyway, I thought that was kind of funny. Now, just looking at some of the comments just here. If Troy ever has security issues with accounts and can't get help because he says, does anyone know someone in the security saying, then everyone will assume Google is brilliant. Yeah. I'm really conscious when I ask for a security contact. If it's not breach related, I say not breach related because there are assumptions drawn. What else we got in here? Another thing I learned, because I just noticed Gordon mentioned flat earthers. If you go onto Twitter and hashtag flat earth, you should see the people that join in that conversation. It's entertaining. Like if you're on a part of the world that's still isolated and you're just looking to be amused for one night, just start hashtagging shit flat earth and watch how weird it gets. It's amazing. All right. So moving on here. Another thing. This will probably be the last thing, I think. Where were we? Pwn passwords. Right. So I have shipped Pwn passwords version 6. Now, I pushed the button right before doing this video, so I really hope I don't get out of this and there's a whole bunch of tweets about something being broken. But to the best of my knowledge, it's working okay. So let me go and grab the other mouse here, and I'll tell you what is in version 6. It is an incremental update to the number of passwords which are in the corpus of breach passwords. There are another 17.3 million passwords in there. That comes in at just under 573 million in total. This is the first release since July last year, so I've waited 11 months. What I'm finding is that there are fewer and fewer opportunities for me to get passwords in plain text, either because there are data breaches that have them in plain text or because someone goes through and cracks a whole bunch of weakly hashed passwords, MD5, SHA-1, this sort of thing. And the other thing is that because the corpus is so big already that even if I do get a whole bunch of new hashes or new passwords, a heap of them have already been in there, and it's like maybe I'll get 1 million passwords, but 950,000 of them are already in Pwn passwords. So all it does is kind of updates the prevalence count of them. It's not like a major new thing. Having said that, I do want to keep a cadence of new passwords flowing through into the system, and this just seemed like an opportunistic time, in part because of the SafePass.me sponsorship this week. And incidentally, that wasn't part of the deal or anything like that. I just sort of thought, they use Pwn passwords. That seems like a good time to push out more passwords. So that was the context there. Now, all of the hash ranges have been updated. So if you hit the API, you'll see that there are a few new things in there. The last modified date in the response header has been updated. So you'll see a date that's about now. It's a few days ago, I think, based on when I generated the files and uploaded them. All of the hashes are downloadable either as SHA-1 hashes or NTLM hashes. I'll explain why again in a moment, just in case someone's missed the background. And you can download both of them either sorted by the hash or sorted by the prevalence, with the most popular ones first. So why then there is SHA-1 and NTLM? I would have been very happy just to hand all of these passwords out in total plain text, no hashing, no nothing. Just like, here they are, plain text as they appeared. because ultimately these are just there to try and help organizations stop other people from using those same passwords, because this effectively helps them implement the NIST guidance that came out a few years ago. I'd be happy to give them in plain text were it not for one thing. And that one thing is that there is a bunch of PII in passwords. Either because people literally put PII in their passwords, they use their email address as their password, or I am at the mercy when I pass through some of these files of having data dumped by hackers who don't always do a fantastic job of delimiting their fields. So there are occasions where I have records that is an entire row of a SQL insert statement. So it's not just the password, it's the email address and something else. Now, so long as that's only a very, very small prevalence and it is literally sub 1%, then that doesn't matter. I don't care if people are doing queries and they possibly come back with hash ranges that have some junk in them, if it's sub 1%. I don't care if people download the hashes in their entirety and there's some junk in there. It doesn't matter, because no one's going to come and actually try and use that as a password anyway. It's a whole bunch of junk which hasn't been parsed out properly. So that doesn't matter. But I do care about shipping someone's PII and making it publicly available. So what SHA-1 does is it allows me to use a very fast hashing algorithm, which of course is bad for password storage, but it's, well, I was going to say it's good for integrity checks. We're sort of moving past SHA-1 now anyway. It is sufficient such that no one's going to see what the source value is unless they crack that hash. And when we go back to the original premise of, frankly, my biggest concern is records that haven't been parsed out properly, and there's still commas and quotation marks and things like this from a CSV or an insert statement. I'm okay with that. They're not cracking that. If they do crack it, then they've got the PII anyway. It doesn't matter. So that's why SHA-1 was used. The other thing about using SHA-1 is in the k-anonymity implementation, where you get to query it with the first 5 characters of the SHA-1 hash and then return the suffixes. It's a pretty efficient hashing algorithm to use for that. I could have used higher variants of SHA. Response sizes would be bigger. It'd be less efficient on the network. The NTLM hashes are there so that organizations and services like SafePass.me, the sponsor's getting a good run this week, so that organizations like that can take it into their internal environment and see who in their Active Directory environment is already using these passwords, because NTLM hashes aren't salted. So that makes that thing very easy. And if you're worried about why they're not salted, go and Google it. There's reasons. So that's everything that's out there. There are torrents for each of those files. Those files are also downloadable if you just want to go and grab the whole lot and pull them straight off Azure, which really means pulling them straight off Cloudflare, because Cloudflare still caches all of this stuff massively. So I tweeted earlier today, in fact, I tweeted a few days ago, I'll do this in order, a few days ago, about how in the last 24 hours, I've seen 25 million requests for PWN passwords. 99% of them, just over 99%, were cached. And then I tweeted today, just before I published this blog post because I wanted to embed it, that Cloudflare has managed to save me 38 terabytes worth of bandwidth in the last month, which, if I had to pay Microsoft for it from Azure, would have cost, drum roll, while the Australian internet loads it up, it's coming. It's more than $3,000. I remember that much. Jeez. So I'm trying to load this on the PC that has a CPU now. Oh, it's actually at 89 degrees. It's cooled down. Let's say it was 3,400. It was somewhere around there. So egress data on Azure gets really expensive when you have enough of it. So Cloudflare makes a really big difference there. So go and use PWN passwords. Oh, here it is. It's loaded. Go and use PWN passwords. It was $3,270. I wasn't far off, and 22 cents. That's all now available, and new passwords, new hashes, all this sort of thing. The caches in each one of Cloudflare's edge nodes should be probably pretty much repopulated by now, because I did push this an hour and a half ago or something. No, actually, I flush cached several hours ago, because then I gave it a while. Anyway, it's going to be fast. All right, let me just see if we've got any other comments. Oh, that's right. There was a question there about performance and more companies using it. Because there's such a high cache hit ratio, and let's just say it's 99% consistently, if I suddenly start doing 100 million queries a day, 99% of those are going to be hitting Cloudflare's cache. I've only got to deal with 1 million queries a day. under Cloudflare's cache, everything is running on Azure Functions, which is Microsoft's serverless implementation. That runs super, super, super fast and super, super, super cheap. So I've sort of got the best of both worlds, where Cloudflare is going to pay for it and serve it almost certainly. In the very rare occasions where they don't, it's going to go and hit a very cheap, very fast app tier underneath that. So go your hardest. Yeah, I have no problems with that at all. All right, so I'm just going to see what's in the comments before we start to wrap this up, and I'll go and get some dinner. What is here that actually has substance? All the things that aren't safe. Is there a way to request passwords in bulk? Yes, you download the hash files, and they are hashed for the reasons I just explained. So they are all on Have I Been Pwned? Go to the passwords link there, and you will get there. Okay. Hashcat 6 is great with RTX cards. Yeah, I saw Hashcat 6 just launched, so that might be a new one to go and get. Until someone cracks, I mean, people will go and crack the hashes. Like I don't mind that, but they are much less likely to crack the hashes which are there from parsing errors, which could be many, many, many dozens of characters long and have all sorts of crap in them. And my goal is not to stop people from cracking hashes. My goal is to protect the PII that's in there, largely due to malformed exports from the source. So that's fine. Any reason you're using Azure Functions over just handling it directly on Cloudflare's edge using workers? So this is a good question, actually, and I have given this some thought. So we'll do the mathematics on this. We're taking 5 characters of a 40-character SHA-1 hash. So we've got 5 characters, 16 possible values each because they're hexadecimal. So we've got 16 to the power of 5 different values, which is 1.04 million something. So really, there's 1.04 million files that actually sit in blob storage in Azure. Now, I had been thinking, why do I need to have functions on top of that? Why don't I just have Cloudflare workers? And workers do sit in this process as well, because they do things like normalize the hash prefixes just in case someone uses an uppercase instead of a lowercase. So why don't I just do something like have the worker connect directly to blob storage and pull it off there? And from memory, the drama I had was originally I had it in table storage, and I couldn't make that available via API. But of course, blob storage you could make publicly available, not necessarily by an API, but via URI. And I could sit the functions, the Cloudflare worker directly on top of that. But I think, to be honest, I got to the point where I'm like, I did it this way already because originally using table storage, the functions are so cheap. When I had astronomically high usage in January last year because of the Collection 1 stuff, and I was having, like, I think the biggest day had 10 million people on it doing even during this just crazy busy period, the mathematics on the cost of functions was something like $30 ever. So it was kind of like I could do that time that I need to spend to do that than what it would actually the app tier there. So that's still there, possible on the cards. There's also the API management layer to stop scraping, isn't there? So yeah, Gordon, you're right. And I use APIM, Azure API Management, on the paid API to scan email addresses. And just to sort of clarify why that's there and then why the password thing is free, email addresses is personal information. I try and manage the acceptable use of that much more carefully. And I've written before about why I put the API and used APIM in there and why I put a little credit card charge on it as well. The passwords, though, go your hardest. Like, I want people using that to the absolute fullest extent possible. I don't want rate limits. I don't want auth. I don't want credit cards. I don't want anything like that. Just hit it as fast and as hard and as frequently as you can. Therefore, I really don't need APIM. I don't see any value for that. Okay, and Burton says I'm breaking up. So I reckon that's a sign, because I've been going for almost 1 hour now, and it is now almost 9 p.m. on a Friday night, and I frankly just want to go and order some pizza and get another beer. So thank you very much for watching this. Sorry I had a false start with the other machine. The new machine I'm going to order tomorrow morning. If anyone has any more great ideas about that, please tweet them or DM me or something, both the machine and the monitors. It's, I think they said 6 to 9 business day delivery, so I don't think it will be here by the next time I do this. But yeah, look, it's just one of those things. I'll have a bunch of other shit break before that comes anyway, and I'll have to fix that too. So thank you for watching this one. I hope you got something out of it. There was a whole bunch of different things in there, and I shall catch you next week.